back to Bit by Bit. I'm Janet here with Jess.
Hi guys.
And today we are here for another game review. We're going to be reviewing Oxenfree, which is a supernatural, story-driven adventure game that came out in 2016, developed by Night School. Currently available on pretty much everything. It's on PS4, it's on Xbox One, it's on Switch, on Windows, on Android, on iOS, on Linux. So you can get it in any form that you need to get it at. And yeah, so we played this game. We're going to go ahead and hit our review in a couple categories. So we're going to go over presentation, narrative, gameplay, and then give you guys our final thoughts. Anything else you kind of want to add just about background on the game? I think that's...
No, I think you covered pretty much everything. So we can jump in with presentation.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
So presentation, meaning visuals, music, the way the game is basically presented to us. So I would say I really dug the art style of this.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like completely enamored by it, but I thought it was quite charming. It had kind of this like eerie, like mist watercolor look to it.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like some of the backgrounds or even sometimes the foreground, though I'm not sure how much they utilize foreground now that I think about it, but it kind of had like an aquatic look to it a little bit.
Yeah.
Definitely like a nice eerie island mist. Because the whole game takes place on Edward's Island. Pretty much the whole game, that's like where the main action happens. There we go. So yeah, I thought that was pretty good. Musically, I felt like it was solid. Like I was actually listening to the soundtrack before we did this to try to remind myself what the music was. Definitely like more of like background elements than anything you would like jam to because you liked it.
Yeah.
But I thought that worked for what the game was doing. So it had like this kind of like, it was either creepy or just like neutral to me. But yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it. I liked the art style a lot. I thought it served the game's like purpose really well. It didn't distract from the game. It wasn't like over the top, but it definitely had like really subtle moments of beauty in it. And I liked how everything was sort of like zoomed out, you know, like you're just seeing the, people go along the hill and whatever.
Yeah.
And it worked really well for the game. I liked being able to see that all from like a distance. You kind of take everything in all at once.
Yeah, it was like playing in a little diorama almost.
Yeah, it was like little paper dolls and stuff. Yeah. So I thought that was really cool. And I don't know, I definitely vibed with it. The music I thought was, I guess I liked how they used the presentation to reflect or kind of like work with what was happening in the game, So like if there was a moment where there was a time loop, which is something we can talk about, a little bit later, how the screen would flip upside down or things would be like fuzzy on the edges, like it looked like a TV kind of gone out of focus or things like that. I thought they did a good job of incorporating everything that they had at their disposal in order to get those moments across, like the atmosphere of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was impressed. I think that was one of my favorite parts of the game was the presentation of it, to be honest.
So especially with it being, a narrative and dialogue driven game, I really liked the font they used on like the little bubbles.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was like, it had a lot of personality without just being like Comic Sans level font.
Typography game, guys. It's important.
Yeah. So I thought that was it, like the font really fit the aesthetic, which is like a really, really small presentation thing, but I appreciated it.
Yeah, so I feel like that pretty much covers presentation. Yeah. As far as gameplay goes, there's a lot there, just because this game, I don't know, it's a little odd. Like a lot of indie games, I feel like it utilizes lots of small, quirky things in the gameplay that you don't see in AAAs, but they're kind of like fun to play with. Yeah, like for me, I liked how customizable the dialogue was.
Yeah.
So part of the, just to... For you guys who haven't played it, part of how the gameplay works is you're walking along with people or whatever, and everyone's kind of talking, and you can see their speech bubbles, and occasionally you'll have like an option to speak, and so they'll show like a few different ways that you can go, and you can pick something to say, to add to the conversation like live as it's happening, or you can kind of like let that moment pass and not say anything, and other people keep talking. So it's not like your traditional dialogue in games where it's like, blah blah, what do you think? Well, I think this, and then this. So I thought that was really cool. I thought it was really seamless. I think that was like the shining star of the gameplay. Because I've never seen that before.
I would totally agree. I'm sure it's been done before, but I've never seen it before either.
I've never seen it.
And I've played like not a whole lot of narrative-driven games. Like I think you've probably still played more than I have, but I've like played a lot of like the big hits of like narrative stories or narrative games. Obviously, stories are inherently narrative stories. Narrative stories.
All right.
And to kind of like zoom out for a second, too, just so you guys kind of know what the general plot of the game is. So you play as Alex, who's this girl that has like teal hair. I love Alex's character design. I think it's so
really cool,
it's so great. It's also kind of doing back into presentation, but yeah, she like everyone looks like so good. They have their like fall kind of rainy outfits on, and she has like this red coat and blue hair, and she's like ambiguously brown, and I love her. She's great.
Yeah.
So you play as Alex, and like the story that gets set up like early on in the game, like when you're on the boat going to Edwards Island, is that you're in high school, probably like upperclassman in high school, like about to go to college. I think because she mentions that she might go away to college at one point.
Yeah, but all the juniors get together on Edward Island. Yeah,
so juniors. Okay, so she's a junior, and she's with her friends. It's Ren is her like the kind of chatty, annoying guy friend. We'll talk about him later. Then there's your new stepbrother. It's Jonah, right? Jonas. Your new stepbrother Jonas, who you don't really know, but you invited him to kind of be polite, and he's just coming with you. And then you also then meet up with your like friends, sort of, or like acquaintances that you like kind of know. It's weird. The relationship isn't super clear. Like you're kind of friends, but have some beef maybe. There's Nona, and is it Clarissa? Clarissa.
Yeah.
And so the characters, the cast you're dealing with. They also allude to your brother Michael, who passed away. So he has like a kind of a role in the story. Like you do get to know him as a character a little bit. And I won't really say like much else than that, but like you do kind of get to know him on some level.
Right.
And that's your cast. So like Jess said, that's how the dialogue functions. And yeah, I thought that was also the best part of the game, because an issue I have with like story-driven games is that, like, well, often they're not well-written to me, or they're not always well-written. Like, some of the options are, like...
They're almost never well-written, to be honest, which I know is going to step on a lot of toes, because everyone's like, oh, we love these narrative-based games. I'm like, yeah, but the narrative is bad.
Yeah.
It's a bad narrative.
And especially, like, and then, I don't know, I find that people have a hard time, like, writing, like, also like, so many of the stories are teen stories, and they're, like... It's a teen story, so it's gonna be like super dramatic and like weird and like really like
a lot of things like rad. And,
or be like, I don't know, like just they're just weird, and I've never related to them. I'm like, this wasn't my high school experience. This isn't anything. Like this just feels like, generic and cheesy and like I'm like embarrassed for what's happening. I'm to be a part of it as a player. Like honestly. Right. But I didn't feel that pretty much at all in this game, which I was really impressed by. There was like, I was playing this game like with my brother, like we just passed the controller back and forth, and he's really against like the cheese of story-driven games and doesn't even play story-driven games like ever. And he really liked this game as well. And there was a moment really early on in the game where you're like having the bonfire, and you can like choose to drink a beer if you want, or you can just like throw rocks into the water, and everyone's playing like truth or slap, right? Is that what they call it? Because instead of dare, like, you can just slap the person if you find out they're lying. That was like...
I think that might be it.
Yeah, I don't know if they called it truth or slap or something else, but like, come on, let's play truth or slap. And my brother's like, he's playing at the time. He's like, this is stupid. This is that, and we kind of talked about this a bit in our last reviews. Like, he's like, this is that, white nonsense that you see in story-driven games all the time. He's like, I don't want to do that. That's stupid. And then you can just not do it. So he didn't do it. He, didn't respond. He literally walked up the stairs away from everyone and just stood there for as long as possible. And, eventually they actually did make you come back down to, progress in the game. But you can really do whatever you want for the most part. You don't have to do anything, and it's great.
That's really interesting, and I do like that you have that much choice. You literally have the choice to, not do, whatever you want.
Alex, come back! And you're just like, fuck you guys, bye. It's great.
Exactly. I thought that was really cool. But I'm curious about that, because I know, for my playthrough, I played because I knew that you hadn't played, so I kind of wanted to see what playing was like. Mm-hmm. And so I played the game. But did you have to play the game eventually after you were throwing the rocks and stuff?
You do have to eventually, right,
because there's some important narrative.
You don't really have to play. You do get involved. I was as uninvolved as possible. There's, I got the moment where they kind of talk about I find out what happens to my brother Michael, which he died. That's like not that big of a spoiler. You find that out really early. But like, so I do find that out, and that's another cool thing too. Like, you can learn things still about the characters or about Alex just through the bubbles themselves, even without clicking on them. So, yeah, but I didn't really like. I like basically didn't participate. Like I like barely. There was like a moment where I was in a conversation, but I didn't really like do anything or say anything. I was just kind of like whatever. I was like really dismissive of the whole thing, and I didn't really play at all. So
I'm kind of curious. I was thinking this after I finished playing the first time. I'm kind of curious if you could go through the whole game without ever talking.
Yeah, I don't know.
I want to try it and see what happens. Like, can you just never talk?
That you can't do. You can't never talk, I think, because I know I did have to come back down and engage with the characters to some extent.
But do you have to use that speech bubble?
I don't know if they forced me to. They might not have.
I wonder what the game would be like if you talked as
little as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, so like there's like different strategies and there's different outcomes, and that's something else that's interesting about the narrative, and that's pretty typical for choice-based games.
Yeah.
Where you're like, at the end, this is what happened. It could have been different, And so, I mean, I know we haven't really talked about it, and we're not going to spoil it for you guys, but I know Janet got a different ending than I did, like, pretty dramatically, so, apparently.
Yeah, it was, like, way different.
Yeah, I don't know what hers was, but I told her what mine was, and she was like, what? So, yeah, so I like that there can be, like, pretty drastic differences in the narrative, and that makes it feel like your choices have weight, and it's not like you're just sitting here making these arbitrary choices. I'm like, I'm going to go make real choices in my real life instead.
Yeah, but I also like that they have weight, but it's not like, it's weird because I like when devs do this, but I also appreciate that this dev didn't. Like, I like that there's no butterfly in the corner of the screen or meter moving or anything like that. You don't really know what your choices mean until it's too late, which I think is, like, the game just felt very natural. Like, if there's one word I can use to describe it, even though it's a super natural game, like, it felt very, like, realistic in terms of, like, the things that were said, the emotions that were felt, like, it felt very, like, down to earth and heartfelt and genuine.
I thought that was true. And it's interesting because I was kind of annoyed because by the end, my relationship, like, with Clarissa wasn't where I thought it was going to end up. And I was like, because, like, she, like, it's not a very big spoiler, but, like, by the end of the game, Clarissa didn't really like my character very much. And I was like, yeah, I know we were, like, had a little bit of beef at the beginning, but I did a lot of nice stuff for you later. But, like, that's kind of like life. Sometimes you rub someone the wrong way and they're done with you. So,
Then kind of speaking on that idea of Clarissa as well, like, one thing I really appreciated is that there definitely were a few archetypes in the game, but it was mainly non-archetypal. And even in the archetypes, I thought there were a good amount of nuance. So,
true.
So if you start playing the game, you might be like, oh, maybe it's not as, like, innovative as we're kind of pitching it as now, because there is, like, we get Clarissa, who is kind of like the bitch, right? Like, she's very much like a jerk to you right away, and a jerk to everyone, and you're like, why am I hanging out with this jerk? Like, why am I even involved in this? And then you have Nona, who's, like, the best friend of Clarissa, who's very soft-spoken. She was my least favorite character.
Too.
And, like, the soft-spoken best friend of the vocal bitch is, like, a very cliche
classic
pairing. Then you have Ren, and his only cliche really is that he's kind of, like, stonery, but he's not, like, super stonery, so I didn't find him to be very, very cliche.
He was not, like, a cliche stoner.
Yeah.
He was, like, a stoner, but also annoying.
Yeah, I think he's just, like, an annoying guy that happens to smoke pot. Like,
yeah, when he smoked pot, I was surprised.
Which was very relatable, I think. It's like, oh, okay.
I was like, you do not seem chill enough to smoke pot. I'm just saying, you just don't.
I was I'm glad he's getting high, so he can at least, kind of, like, be quiet a little bit. Yeah.
It didn't work.
He talked a lot.
Ugh,
I really didn't hang out with him at all, because he was kind of annoying. I hung out with Jonah, though, all the time. With Jonas.
Me too. I hung out with Jonas, too.
Jonas was awesome. I love Jonas.
I would say that, but I really like Jonas. So Jonas is, like, your new stepbrother, and he was pretty cool, except for it gets, like, weird at this part. There's this part in the game where you have to, like, choose who you want to take with you. And I chose to take Nona with me, and both Ren and Jonas were like, oh, what the hell? And I was like, well, you guys are arguing like a couple of brats. And also, I haven't hung out with Nona the whole game. I'm curious about her.
Oh, cool. How much was hanging out with Nona?
Nothing. They didn't develop her at all. That's my one big complaint about characters in the game, is that Nona was, like, completely underdeveloped. And I thought she was, like, the more interesting, like,
it would have been nice to
get to try to, like,
she feels like
out.
a kind of, not a foil isn't the right word, because I think foil is when it's opposite, right? But she felt kind of like a, the other side of, like, Jonas, kind of. Like, in terms of being, like, kind of soft-spoken and, like, not as, like, in tune with the group, but like with the potential to be interesting. So yeah, it would have been cool if they did. I took Jonas with me. So during that part where it's like, oh, who do you want to go with to have you do this mission? I'm like, I'm just gonna keep hanging out with Jonas. I'm just hanging out with Jonas the whole time on the island.
He was going on and being so annoying, and I was like, oh, Nona's as annoying as Ren, and Nona's being all quiet. I love how quiet Nona's being, but then she never talked to me at all.
Oh no, I love Jonas. We like talked about religion and stuff. It was great.
Jonas is cool.
He was like, maybe I should believe in God now because I'm seeing all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, it was great. I loved it.
So you get a lot of different, because I never had that conversation. So you get a lot of different, like, narrative choices based on, like, what you pick. And I like that. Yeah, I don't know. I thought, like, overall, I liked a lot of the story aspects, but I wouldn't say the story blew me away. It was, like, kind of fun to play with, and the characters were kind of interesting, but at the end of the day, I wasn't that invested in some of the choices I felt like I was supposed to be invested in. And I think that, honestly, most games fall flat in that area. Like, a lot of games have a hard time getting you to, like, or getting me to care about a relationship with a character. I want to be invested in this relationship. So, like, I didn't really care if, like, Ren didn't like me by the end. Ren is supposed to be, like, your best friend. And I'm like...
He's annoying. I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I think that part of it was the relationships at the beginning were not well established, which I think they were trying to give you room to sort of discover things and figure things out a little bit at a time. Which backfired a little bit when it came to, like, being invested in the relationships of characters. With Jonas, I felt like I was more easily able to invest in it because it was a clean slate. Everyone else I'm supposed to, like, have this background with, but I'm not privy to the background as a player. And so it felt like I'd just been thrown into this, like, onto this beach with these strangers who aren't very nice, you know? So that was a little hard. So, like, I could tell by the end that it was supposed to be like, oh, like, do you and Ren, like, are you close? Are you friends? I'm like, I don't care. I don't know Ren. I don't know this guy. He's horrible.
He's really annoying.
Yeah, so it was just one of those things that I think that it's hard to balance, especially because they were trying to, you know, create more of a mystery and, like, you know, figuring things out little by little. I thought the same thing with, like, Clarissa. I felt a little bit cheated as a player in the way I made my choices because there's things that, like, there's flashbacks in the game that give you more information, and things that I learned from flashbacks that obviously Alex had experienced. So she's privy to the experience, and I'm not as a player. Should have affected how I talked to Clarissa at the beginning on the beach. Because Clarissa was being like, whatever, and I'm like, who is this crazy person? I've never met Clarissa as the player. And so my reaction to her was like, go away, you're the worst, and everyone should tell you you're the worst because you're the worst, which is why she didn't like me. But then there were some flashbacks, and I was like, oh, maybe Clarissa's not that bad. Except for, like, Alex, you were there for this. You knew she wasn't that bad. Why did you let me talk to her that way? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know everything. Like, they made it seem like things were a different way than they were. And I'm just not going to get into it because I don't want to spoil anything for you. Maybe I should, so you can, you know, treat Clarissa how you want to.
Well, maybe later we could do I'd be down to probably do a spoiler cast to some extent. I want to do more spoiler stuff.
Yeah, because it's fun to talk about.
Yeah,
but we don't want to ruin it for you.
But for me, for narrative, it's funny because I kind of have, like, not the opposite experience, but for me, I'm not, like, like, for being invested in the characters, it's not, like, the number one thing for me always. Like, it's a thing I think about, but it's not, like, my main focus. For me, I was really into just, like, where the story was going. Because basically what happens, to, like, not give too much away, is early on in the game, like, during the first, like, within the first hour, like, well within the first hour, like, you have this radio that you brought along with you, and Ren's like, hey, like, they say that if you tune your radio, like, and you stand in this spot, like, weird stuff will happen, and then you're like, let's see, and then you, like, rip open this, like, hole in space and time, and then, like, you're like, oh, what are these? Are these ghosts? Are these, like, what is this? Like, who is this someone? Like, what is this? And you kind of spend the whole game figuring out, like, what just happened? Where are we? Like, you kind of have, like, different moments where you're, like, black out at times, or different things, or people just kind of disappear or go missing, or something.
You're not sure if they're okay or
whatnot. So there are these temporal disturbances that happen throughout the game. And I was, like, really intrigued by, like, what was going on Edward's Island. Like, why is this happening? What does this mean? How do I control it? How can I, like win in terms of, like, getting safe and, like, getting my friends to be safe and, like, getting off this island? And I was really intrigued on where that was going to go. And, you know, without actually saying what happened, I was pretty satisfied with how things turned out narratively on that end, which was great because, like, I was really into the game, but I was really, really scared the whole time playing. I'm like, I hope that Alex isn't going to wake up and this is all going to be a dream, because I hate stuff like that. But it was actually, I thought it was well done, and not, like, cliche or weird.
My ending was very chilling. And I'm not going to say what my ending is because I don't know if your ending was as chilling.
I had the same ending in terms of what you're talking about? I know it's very vague, but
like the very last part.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's
it like made me think for a long time.
I was like,
I feel like it was very thought provoking, especially at the very end. And that I've looked up the other endings, and that the very last thing you get at the end. It doesn't always happen, but it happens almost always. There's one way out.
It's probably because we didn't win.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, anyway,
we messed
just
up.
play it and see what happens at the end, and if you're not chilled, then you probably did it right.
But yeah, I thought it was really good. To kind of, if it's cool, just to swing back to gameplay.
Yeah, I jumped into gameplay like early, so my bad.
Yeah, that's what. Well, I was like, oh, well, then I started thinking, I'm like, maybe we should do gameplay before narratives if it's like a narrative-driven game, because like. You know, so I don't know.
Right.
So I was like, I was gonna go with it, but then we went to narrative. I'm like, we didn't really talk about gameplay in depth. So gameplay.
Yeah, let's talk about gameplay.
I guess, do you want to start by giving kind of a rundown of all the elements? I know you mentioned there's dialogue choices.
Yeah, so we talked about the dialogue choices, which I feel like we got into pretty well. But there's also, like, one of the main aspects is this radio. And so you brought the radio because, like, Ren mentioned that, he heard that there are certain spots where if you tune your radio just right, weird stuff happens. And that starts out pretty early. And there's, like, these points on the map where you can go and tune your radio and like you can hear stuff like history about the island, like, you know, like if you were in a museum and you had like an audio book or something, kind of like that, where you have to tune in. But there's also these like little rocks that are like there's something
abnormalities, or they called abnormalities,
or anomalies.
Anomalies.
So these anomalies on the map where you can go and like weird stuff happens when you play your radio, like a weird song plays or there's a weird noise, or so you tune it back and forth like with your cursor and like on the dial until you get to the right part, and it kind of like vibrates and turns a different color. But the main thing that radio does is like Janet mentioned, when there's like these things in the sky that kind of like open up, and there's those little triangles, and if you tune your radio, it like draws a line and makes all these other shapes, and stuff opens into other like dimensions or universes or something. We don't know. And so that's pretty cool. And eventually, you do find a bigger radio that has like, you know, more frequencies. And so you can go different places or do different things you couldn't do before because you're like, oh, my radio doesn't have that frequency. Weird. And so then later you do. Yeah. They unlock doors, stuff like that. So they really take the radio gameplay mechanic and like take it all the way. There's also really interesting stuff concerning time loops, like I mentioned earlier, where you'll like be walking along the map and everything's fine, and you'll be having a conversation, and then you'll like zip back to the front of the map, and you're like asking the same question, or someone's talking to you in the same way, and you're like, we already did this, and they're like, no, we didn't, and then like you'll do it like 4 times, and they're like, yeah, we already did this, and you have to like fix the time loop, which I always thought was a little weird, actually, but you have to like go to this music box. And you have to like crank it so that the music is playing at the right speed, because it'll be either too slow or too fast until you get it just right, and then the time loop is fixed. Yeah.
There's also sometimes like other ways to fix it too, sort of, or like ways to like trigger the music box to appear.
You have to get the music box to show up.
So, but yeah, it is all based on the radios basically. So we already, I think, talked at length about how dialogue affects the game, so we can kind of just like put that aside, I think, because I think we've already kind of gotten to what that means. For I would say one of the weaker aspects of the game is like the puzzles, because the puzzles are like basically like the radio, like using the radio, and I liked like tuning. You have to just like play with tuning it to like make things happen, and it's fairly easy. But when you get like the radio with more frequencies, it's really annoying to me to try to find the right frequency to open like the doors or to unlock things, and it's like not hard at all, but it's just kind of like tedious. So I thought that was like a little bit less interesting. So like especially towards the end when you had the larger like amount of frequencies to choose from, I found them to be like a little tedious and kind of like a less like interesting or intriguing part of the game. So that'd be like probably the number one thing that I wasn't as much of a fan of, just like that specific type of puzzle.
Yeah, I think that there were, as far as puzzles go, I found them pretty uncompelling. It was like, oh, I know I have to do this here, or they'd pretty much say, oh, now we're going to go do this. So you go here and do this, and we'll go here and do this, and then you go do that thing. So I felt like there was a lot of hand-holding as far as the puzzles go. Yeah. Whereas there were things from, like, I'd noticed in the map, I'd be like, oh, I bet I have to use that later to do this. And then later, like, let's do it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even get to figure it out. You told me to do it. So, like, fine. So that was not as great, I thought. But not all games have to be super puzzly. Yeah. And that's okay.
And there were a few moments of, like, organic discovery, but only a few.
Yeah. And I would say that there's also...
Could have been more.
With sort of the the ghosts or whatever force is sort of driving this, plot.
The sunken.
Yeah, the sunken. With some of the like tests they put you through, or they're like kind of messing with you. I felt a lot of those didn't feel like I had a chance with them. It was
I love those. They were messed up, and I'm like, what's wrong with you?
But it was like there was no way for me to like win, and it also didn't really feel like losing mattered. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I lost and now my friends are dead or something like that. It was like, I lost and they're like, ha, you lost, and then I move on with my life.
Yeah, I think, and maybe, for all I know, there's like there could be some level of an untruth to that, or like, because I haven't played it multiple times, maybe there are different things.
Maybe something happens if I did something different.
But the way it's presented to the player and the way it feels as a player, like, which is really all that matters. Yeah. You shouldn't have to play the game multiple times for it to be good. Not saying the game isn't good, but just saying that.
I think it is good.
I think the critique is still valid. Yeah, I also felt that way, like, you don't really have a shot. But I think me being, like, who I am, maybe as a player, I was still, like, really, like, stressed by it and really wanting to figure it out and kind of being frustrated, like, no, man, screw you guys. Like, you're just, like, messing with me. And also, like, what are you even talking about right now? Like, they would have stuff like, literally, it would just be, like, how many, like, at one point. And I think if you, like, dig into the game more, like, if you played the game kind of more slowly and carefully, you might have discovered some of those answers to the questions.
Yeah, like, I knew some of the answers, but I didn't know
I did know some of them. But they were like, how many people died on this boat that one time? I'm like... And they give it's like multiple choice, and I'm like 48, and they're like it's 72, or I don't know what the actual numbers were.
Right.
And then at one point, two different points of the game, which is like kind of an experiential spoiler, but I just think it's super interesting. They flipped the screen upside down,
find stuff.
One of them is that you had to find stuff, and then one was they just flipped it upside down, and they had stuff on a board, and then that was really confusing, which I thought was smart because like. I love when I, as a player, feel the way the character is feeling in the game.
Frustrated and cheated.
Yeah. When it's well done. There are ways to do that where it's just cheap and whack, but I thought it was really smart because it was confusing when they flipped it because I'm like, so if I press up, is that up when I look upside down? Like how this is up? Or is down up? It's too late. I have to choose. All right, it's supposed to choose already. I'm dead now. I mean, you're not actually dead, but
Right.
But yeah, that was crazy. At one point I literally did, I did turn myself upside down to try to solve some of the stuff. I also considered, I played on the Switch, and I was just take it out and flip it over, but I didn't do that because I thought that would be cheap, but I did literally try to turn upside down while playing it, to find out where I needed to go, but yeah.
Another thing that I thought was a little confusing as far as gameplay goes is that occasionally when you're talking, if someone would get like a picture of another character over their head, like if you said something like that they liked, I guess, like your picture would show over their head, but I never knew what that meant. I was like, is it negative? Is it positive?
I never knew what it meant either.
But like, I don't know.
Never knew what it meant.
I'm like, you might as well just not put them there because I don't know what they are. Okay?
Exactly.
So
it wasn't clear at all.
Yeah.
And I also
might as
didn't
well
like
just
that.
not know. I'll just go based on your reactions to me. I'd like that better. If I'm like this and they're like, that was rude, then I know you thought I was rude and that you're not happy with me, as opposed to my face showing up there.
Yeah, that was weird. I thought that was also very weird. I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot that happened, and it was weird.
It's a little thing, but for me, I was just like, what? And it would like take me out of the game because I'm like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
What's happening? And I didn't even know that the relationships really mattered that much, kind of till near the end. So
yeah, yeah, it's weird. I would say to me, and maybe this also isn't completely true because once again, I haven't done multiple playthroughs. I feel like the relationships matter less than in other story-driven games, but I don't think that's necessarily negative.
Right.
Though, I mean, it could be depending on what you want from your story-driven games. If you're really looking for, like deep relationships that you can really craft, I would say maybe not so much, but if you're, like, just looking for, like, good story and, like, kind of already seeing the relationships that are already presented to you rather than the way you influence them, then I think Oxenfree will still satisfy that. Because I, like, learning more about Michael and, like, the whole like, storyline that involves Michael and all, which is all I'm going to say about it because I don't want to spoil it, is, like, one of the most moving moments I've had in gaming, like, ever. Emotionally, I would say. Yeah, it was just so, like, I don't know, it was, like, the fact that he's dead, the fact that, like, you're thinking about, like, when you're having, like, these moments where you kind of get to know Michael, and I won't kind of explain how you have those moments, but...
They were really sad.
Yeah, it was sad because, like, he's dead. So, like, yeah, they're basically kind of like flashbacks, sort of, and that's all I'll say on it. I know I keep repeating that, but I really don't want to, like, when it happened, I was like, what? I didn't even know this could happen. And another thing I really liked about, like, now we're jumping kind of back into narrative, but about, like, the way Oxenfree functioned, like, I felt like once I got to know how to do something, they would still present me with new, weird stuff, and I thought that was cool. It kind of helped keep it from getting stagnant. It wasn't like, oh, I know, I just gotta, like, flick my radio. I mean, there's an element of comfort in that, but
then sometimes it's like, oh, wait, that's not right, or something happened.
Or like, even the tests that the weird spirit stuff would give you, I'm like, I didn't know, like, what is this? Like, it was surprising in a way that I thought was useful.
So I think it's like overall thoughts. I think it was a good game. I think I would recommend it to a lot of people. For me, it was not like my favorite game I've ever played, but I would consider playing it again. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. It's a pretty short game. Yeah, I don't know. I just punched it out in a couple days, and I'll probably do another playthrough at some point.
Yeah. Do you know how many hours it took you?
Maybe 5.
Yeah, mine was about like 4 or 5 or something. Overall thoughts for myself. I love this game. Loved it. It's definitely one of my favorite games of all time. I think it was the best game that came out in 2016.
Wow.
Best game is not Inside anymore. Sorry, Inside. It's Oxenfree. It's Oxenfree by a lot. Overwatch, which is... That's okay
Overwatch,
that it can be...
Overwatch all day! Sorry, but they're totally different. They're totally different games.
You should have, like, for no reason, like, last year's Game of the Year conversation. There's a lot of reasons why I accept Overwatch's Game of the Year via publications, but I don't necessarily think it's, like...
It's an amazing game.
You know, they're very different. Anyway, the point, for me, my Game of the Year was Inside, and now it's Oxenfree. So if you liked Inside, like, you might vibe with Oxenfree. Yeah, I thought it was, you know, the dialogue was really smart. I thought it avoided a lot of things that people normally don't like in narrative-driven games. I thought the sci-fi element was well done. It wasn't like, didn't feel cliche. I felt like I got a satisfying story from it. I thought it was thought-provoking. I was thinking about the game for a couple days. And it was really heartfelt and emotional in a way that felt organically done. And not like, it didn't feel like the game was trying to make me feel anything. I just kind of felt things as I was experiencing them.
I thought they did a pretty good job at that.
Yeah.
Which is really hard to do.
Yes.
If you take any other game as an example.
Yeah, like, I think moments of, like, real, like, humanity, like, and, like, empathy in games are very rare. And I know we all talk about, like, The Last of Us and, like, whatever, you know, and I haven't played The Last of Us in its entirety. But yeah, I think this is one of the few games that really does it. Which is impressive from, like, you know, an indie game that's just a couple hours long. And it's not a disparaging comment, that's just that, like, I don't know, I don't normally get those experiences from something of that brevity. But for this I did, so I 100% recommend it. Loved Oxenfree. Thinking about getting an Oxenfree tattoo, how much I loved Oxenfree. I want to get the little triangle thing with the space.
Cool, yeah.
And then I'm thinking of doing, like, maybe not here, but somewhere, either writing Oxenfree or doing all the outs are, you know, the little thing they would, like, they'd say, like, Oxenfree or all the outs are free or whatever. There's, like, different versions of how to say that phrase.
Right.
So, yeah. So I want to do that because it would look cool aesthetically, and also, like, I love that game. Yeah, also, quick sidebar on that, too. It was cool to have, like, a game that was that awesome with, like, a lead female character who felt like a person, who felt like an actual person.
It was great.
It's like a regular person that happens to be a girl.
I
would say,
nice. as much as I, there's like some problems I had with other characters. I loved Alex as a character. Yeah. I loved being Alex.
And she was brown, which was dope.
Yeah, you never see that. So it was great. It was really great.
Yeah. And there are little Polaroid selfies in the game that are cute.
Oh yeah, I do like the Polaroid selfies. So there's lots of reasons to play. Go check it out, you know.
And it's on everything.
Yeah, it's on everything.
Cheap. It's $20 if you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Which isn't too bad.
No, it's not that bad at all. So if you do play it, let us know what you thought. Yeah, and just check it out.
Yeah, and thanks for checking out this review, guys. This is the first game we've reviewed that we both like, or that any of us like, because usually we like nothing.
Oh, yeah.
It's just been different levels of dislike. Resident Evil, yeah, but we didn't really fucking review that.
Okay.
Yeah, so Resident Evil and Oxenfree, the spook vibes are strong on this channel. But yeah, thanks for checking this out, guys, and we'll see you here next week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.